So we are back with a brand new movie on what if Naruto became the warrior of wood in the digital world. But before we start, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Now let's begin the story. Rasengan. A young woman's voice shouted. Within the walls of Konohagakure no Sato, or the village hidden in the leaves, intense training was taking place. In the Namikaze compound, a young woman was thrusting a swirling ball of chakra into the trunk of a tree. This woman was 17 years old with flawless porcelain skin, long golden blonde hair that was done up into twin pigtails that were styled to look like drills, lilac eyes, and an athletic yet womanly figure that would make most supermodels jealous. She was currently dressed in a dark blue shirt with short sleeves and a red swirl insignia on the back, a pair of black shinobi pants, blue sandals, and she had a tanto strapped across her back. She breathed hard as she cancelled out her attack and observed the results. She groaned in disappointment as she saw that she has left spiral-shaped gouges in the tree that weren't very deep, as opposed to the deep, circular indent left in the tree next to her by her father. Damn it, why can't I get this right? She cursed. Don't feel bad, Mito-chan. It took your father 3 years to create and master the Rasengan, said a woman with long red hair that reached the back of her thighs and the same lilac eyes as her daughter. Your mother's right, Mito Masumi. You're already farther along with mastering the technique than me or my old sensei, Jiraiya, were when I was your age, said a man with spiky golden blonde hair and blue eyes wearing a white cloak with red flames licking the bottom. These two are Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage, and his wife, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, Konoha's red hot-blooded habanero. Their daughter, Mito, was considered their pride and joy by both the parents, her godparents and god-siblings, and the whole village. Mito just crossed her arms and puffed out her cheeks as she pouted, causing her parents to laugh at her antics. Come on, why don't we go out for lunch? We can visit Ichiraku's, Minato suggested. And with that, both Uzunami women instantly perked up. If there was one thing that both mother and daughter had in common, it was their insatiable appetite for ramen. Seriously, many times Minato couldn't help but wonder where they put it all, let alone how they were able to eat so much without their stomachs popping. One of life's many mysteries that shall never be solved, I guess. But there was one member of this family who wasn't so happy and looked on at the scene with nothing but disdain and anger. Watching from the window of what must have been his bedroom was a young man who appeared to be the same age as Mito, but he was definitely different from her. Instead of blonde hair, he inherited his mother's fiery red hair, which appeared to be a few shades darker, though it had a spikier appearance like his father's. His hair reached down past his shoulders, and he kept it tied in a low ponytail. He had ocean blue eyes that were currently narrowed into a death glare, tan skin, and a set of 3 whisker-shaped birthmarks on each side of his face. He was wearing a short-sleeved tan shirt with a mesh armor shirt underneath, a pair of blue shinobi pants, and a pair of ninja sandals. This young man is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the only son of Minato and Kushina, and Mito's older brother by 3 minutes. He's also the one child that his family doesn't seem to care for. It's always about her, all because she has that damn chakra, and because of a damn perverted frog who can't keep his nose out of things he shouldn't be involved in, snarled Naruto. It's not your fault that they decided to neglect their only son, Naru-kun. I'm honestly surprised at my former container, as she was so excited to become the mother of twins before you and your sister were born, a woman's voice said from within Naruto's mind. I can't help but feel that it's my fault you're going through this. If the seal hadn't been broken that night and I hadn't been forced to go on a rampage, maybe then you would have a better life. Don't go blaming yourself, Megumi-chan. If it's not my fault, then it's not yours either. We both know that the fault lies with that masked Uchiha who attacked on the night I was born. Naruto said. You see, on the night that Naruto and his sister, Mito, were born, a man in a swirling mask with a single eye hole appeared out of nowhere. He killed the Anbu that were stationed to guard the area where Kushina had been giving birth before killing both the midwife and the Sandaime Hokage's wife, Bawako Sarutobi, before taking the newborn Naruto and Mito hostage and threatening to kill them unless Minato stepped away from Kushina. Her seal, which had been keeping the 9-tailed fox Biju sealed away, had weakened during the birthing process, and somehow this man knew when and where Kushina would be giving birth, and he exploited it by tossing the 2 children into the air and making to stab them. Naturally, Minato reacted quickly and accordingly and flashed to intercept, catching his twin children before either of them could be killed. Unfortunately, the masked man was as crafty as he was ruthless and had attached paper bombs to the children's blankets. Minato managed to save his kids from being blown to smithereens, but the masked man had gotten away with Kushina. After making sure his children were safe, he quickly rushed out and went to find his wife. But by the time he found her and the masked man, it was too late. The nine-tailed fox had been released from Kushina. Minato had managed to get his wife back to the safe house where their children had been left before going out to confront the demon. He and the ninjas of the village had fought valiantly, but alas, they could do nothing to repel the beast. Although, Minato had noticed how the fox hadn't really been fighting as though it was intent on destroying everything. If anything, it looked like it had been fighting some outside force and was acting like how a cornered animal would act in the wild. As if it were trying to escape and find a safe place. Eventually, Minato managed to find the masked man and drive him off, somehow breaking his hold on the nine tails, but still he was left with a situation that was less than ideal. He was left with no choice but to use the Reaper Death Seal to split the nine-tailed fox into two and seal both halves into his newborn children. Of course, having been a Jinchuriki herself and fully aware of the kind of life that most Jinchuriki are forced to go through, she was totally against the idea from the beginning. But Minato had faith, albeit misplaced faith, that the villagers would see their children as heroes for holding the beast at bay. And he was fully prepared to give his life to save the village and his family. But a certain old man had intervened. 17 years ago. An explosion of dust appeared in the forest as the boss toad, Gamabunta, was summoned onto the scene. The scarred toad glared at the nine-tailed fox as Minato stood upon his head. The nine-tailed fox, I hope you realized, even with help, I won't be able to beat this thing. Gamabunta said with narrowed eyes. Then it's a good thing that I'm not asking you to defeat the nine tails, Minato said, adjusting the two bundles in his arms. I just need you to hold it down long enough for me to seal it away again. So, you're going to use one of your tadpoles as the new vessel? Even if their chakra coils haven't fully developed yet, the beast may be too much for either one of them to contain. Gamabunta said, concerned for the health of the children. Minato glared at the nine tails, its tails thrashing about as he replied, I know. But that's why I'm going to split the nine tails in two. I'll seal the yin half within my son and the yang half in my daughter. Gamabunta was silent as he slowly began to draw his tanto. You're really going through with this, aren't you, brat? Gamabunta asked, though it sounded like a statement. I have no choice. Minato said. My only regret is that I won't be there to look after my children. To watch them grow, learn, and become the splendid ninjas that I know they can be if they choose to. But at least they'll still have their mother to look after them with all of the love and warmth that only a mother can give. Gamabunta closed his eyes and said, Fine then. You are the best summoner as toads could have asked for, Minato. I just pray that the Shinigami has mercy when he collects your soul. Before Minato could respond, though, he was suddenly knocked out by a chop to the back of the neck. As he fell, his children were caught by Hiruzen Sarutobi, who had knocked his successor out cold. I should have guessed that you would be the one to stop him from sacrificing himself like this, Gamabunta said. Don't be surprised. I knew that Minato would try something like this. Like my predecessors before me, he was prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice. Hiruzen said. But it's not his sacrifice to make. Not this time. I have lived a long life, but now it's my time to sacrifice my life as the Sandaime Hokage and protect my village as Hashirama and Tobirama-sensei did before me. Gamabunta tensed as he got ready to fight. Then let's do this, old man. Ninja art. Reaper Death Seal. Hiruzen intoned. All the spectators could see was a flash of light as the sealing was done. Present time, by the time Minato woke up, the sealing was over, and his children were the twin Jinchuriki to the nine-tailed fox. He had fully intended to keep his children's status as Jinchuriki a secret from the rest of the village in order to give his kids some semblance of a normal childhood, but someone on the village council of elders, Minato doesn't know who exactly, though he has his suspicions, leaked the information of his son being a Jinchuriki. And so, he was forced to create and enforce a SSS class law that stated that any who should speak about his son's status as a Jinchuriki, especially to the younger generation, would be executed on the spot. No exceptions. The council certainly fell in line after Minato beheaded a rather fat and ugly councilman who had the audacity to call his infant son a demon. But that didn't stop the people from making Naruto's life a living hell while his sister was basically treated like a princess. Especially after Jiraiya told Minato and Kushina about a prophecy from the toads. A child born from two powerful ninja, forced to bear a great burden, would rise and change the ninja world. They would bring either great peace, or they would bring about the end of the world. Naturally, this led to Jiraiya, along with Minato and Kushina, to jump to the conclusion that Mito was the child of prophecy. And because of this, they slowly began favoring Mito over Naruto, and she was practically the heir of both clans even though Naruto is the oldest and by law the position of heir is his by birthright. He wasn't always neglected by his family, though. Naruto was loved and nurtured just the same as Mito up until they were 4 years old. That's when things started to go downhill. But it was also a few years later, when he turned 7 years old, that Naruto became aware of his tenant. And the fact that his tenant had become its own separate entity. 10 years ago, little Naruto sighed for the umpteenth time that night. His parents were out training Mito in the ninja arts, and when he asked if he could join in their training, they told him that he had to wait until he started the academy like everyone else. It made him upset at how hypocritical his parents were being, saying that he should wait until he joins the academy even though they were training Mito early. Even his pervy granddad and Granny Tsunade didn't make any time for him and treated him as though he were a pest instead of a person. He didn't understand. Did he do something to make them mad at him? If so, what was it that he did, and why wouldn't they tell him what he did? At least Mr. Orochimaru was kind enough to teach him some taijutsu and beginner-level kenjutsu so that he could defend himself a little better from the mobs that always seemed to be out for his blood. Honestly, Naruto was beginning to see Orochimaru as something of an uncle and someone who he could really look up to these days. Naruto knew that his parents and sister were probably going to get ramen for dinner after they were done training, so he pretty much had the whole house to himself. Honestly, he doesn't know how they can stomach that stuff while he himself hates that stuff. He always felt like he was eating a bowl of grease whenever he had to eat it, but that's beside the point. He got up and went to the kitchen and cooked himself a small dinner, just some rice and steamed vegetables. He had to teach himself how to cook, and then went straight to bed knowing that it was pointless to stay up and wait for his family. As Naruto closed his eyes, he fully expected to slip into another dreamless sleep. Instead, he found himself opening his eyes to find himself in what appeared to be a sewer tunnel. A very dark and depressing sewer tunnel that was dimly lit by rows of torches along the walls. Oh, this is just gross. Did the villagers break into the house and dump me in the sewer hoping that I'd drown? Naruto said to himself. He looked on ahead and felt like there was something at the end of the tunnel waiting for him. It unnerved the lad how the pipe seemed to have a red glow to it. He wanted to listen to his brain, which was telling him to stay away from the potentially dangerous glowing red pipe, but for some reason, against his better judgment, he started walking down the pipe. The glowing seemed to grow stronger and stronger the farther along he went. Naruto thought about going back, but his legs just kept moving forward until eventually he came upon a huge cage, easily about half the size of the Hokage monument. The lock to the cage was guarded by a sealing tag which had a seal that looked very complex. Naruto didn't know what to make of this. He'd never seen anything like it. He was about to turn around and leave when he heard a familiar sound. He recognized the sound because he made it frequently after being attacked by the villagers when he got home late from his lessons with Orochimaru. Did I forget to mention that he is attacked almost daily by the villagers? And even on those nights where he just felt sad and lonely. It was the sound of crying, and it sounded like a girl. Being the curious and concerned little boy that he was, Naruto walked up to the cage and slipped in between the bars to investigate and see if he could help. He soon found where, or rather who, the crying was coming from. It was a woman who had long red hair like his mother's, but hers was a darker shade. She was dressed in an elegant kimono and wore Geta sandals on her feet. Excuse me, miss. Why are you crying? Naruto asked, trying to be as polite as possible. The woman gasped and her head snapped up, giving Naruto a better view of her face and some features that definitely weren't on normal humans. She had light skin that really stood out from her dark red hair, but rather than having ordinary human eyes, this woman had blood-red eyes with thin slits for pupils. She also had a pair of red fox ears with white tips sticking out of the top of her head instead of human ears, and like Naruto, she also had whisker marks on her face. But she only had 4 in total instead of 6. And emerging from behind her were 9 fox tails that were covered in fur as red as her hair that also had white tips. Now, naturally, Naruto was startled by this woman's appearance. But then again, who wouldn't be when faced with someone who has the body of a human and the features of an animal? Especially an animal that's been hated around the village for as long as the young boy could remember. But he didn't have time to ponder why she had these features as he was quickly wrapped up in a hug by the woman who continued to cry loudly as she released all of her sorrow. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, it's all my fault, she wailed. What's your fault? Naruto asked. The woman sniffled and broke the hug as she wiped her eyes with her kimono sleeve. It's my fault that you're treated so poorly by the villagers. That you're seen as a demon instead of the vessel containing the beast. Well, half of the beast, at least. She explained. Now, Naruto may not be the smartest guy in the world. I mean, come on, he's only 7 years old. But he knew enough about the story of what happened on October 10th 7 years ago to realize exactly who this woman really was. You're the nine-tailed fox? Naruto asked. But rather than fear, his voice was filled with a kind of curiosity that is strongest during one's childhood. And the Nine Tails heard his tone and was a little relieved, and confused, at his lack of fear of her. Well, yes. More accurately, though, I am the yin half of the Biju. I don't know how it happened, But somehow when my young half and I were separated on that night, I developed into my own separate entity instead of just remaining as one half of Kurama," she proceeded to explain. "Kurama? Who's Kurama?" Naruto asked. "Kurama is the name that my young half and I had when we were still one being. We still share a sort of link with each other, kind of like twin telepathy, and through that link I can feel that he's been slowly regaining the power that he lost 7 years ago. My young half remained a male, but for whatever reason I was turned into a female and have been growing in strength," the fox woman said. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that last statement as she unfurled something from around one of her tails. It appeared to be half of a tail that was still growing, if the bubbling red chakra that was slowly expanding and lengthening was any indication. "It appears that my power has been growing to the point where I'm gaining a 10th tail of power. Soon, I will no longer be a 9-tailed fox, but a 10-tailed fox," she said before asking, "Why do you not fear me, child? You know what I am, what I was once a part of, and what I have done to make your life hell. You should be afraid of me, hate me even, so, why don't you?" Naruto surprised her by walking up to her and wrapping his arms around her in a hug. Naturally, the foxwoman was shocked and confused by the 7-year-old's actions. "It's because you're not a bad person. You may have done those things when you were part of Kurama, but you're not anymore. You're not the same fox who attacked the village. You're you, and that's all that matters to me," Naruto said. The vixen was taken aback by this child's honest words and surprising level of maturity. She could feel his emotions through his words and began to tear up again at the kindness, sincerity, and another emotion that she couldn't quite understand just yet. She slowly wrapped her arms and tails around the young boy as she returned the hug. "Megumi." "Huh?" Naruto asked, looking up at her. The vixen in human form gave Naruto a teary smile as she said, "That is the name I have chosen for myself. Please, call me Megumi." Present time, that was the day that a beautiful friendship was formed between the young man and his Biju partner. Naruto didn't consider her a prisoner and made that very clear by changing his mindscape from a dark and dreary sewer to a beautiful meadow with a log cabin in the middle of the clearing. The cage and seal had also changed into a choker around Megumi's neck, with the seal tag turning into a pendant. Megumi was so overjoyed by this that she had brought Naruto into an almost literally bone-crushing hug as she thanked him repeatedly before turning into a small fox and chasing after a rabbit that caught her eye and awakened her predatory instincts. And after that day, Megumi made it a point to help Naruto train in the ninja arts. She first started by helping him unlock his chakra, and his reserves were massive for a 7-year-old, being at the level of a high chunin to low jonin. Then she had him start on chakra control exercises such as leaf sticking, kunai balancing, tree climbing, and water walking, all of which helped raise his control considerably. She had also tested his affinity, and, to both their surprise, he had extremely potent affinities for earth, water, wind, and the wood element of the Shodem Hokage. They didn't dwell on that too much and just stuck to learning techniques for his elements. In order to speed his training along, Megumi had taught Naruto the shadow clone technique, which really helped speed up his progress since everything that the clones learned would be transferred to the original. She did mention, though, that this doesn't apply to physical training. After 10 years of training under Megumi's tutelage, Naruto had all but mastered his earth and water elements and was highly skilled in the wind element. And he had made great progress with the wood element, even recreating Hashirama's famous wood dragon jutsu completely by accident. He didn't use this technique more than once, though, and only as a last resort since it was a real drain even on his massive chakra reserves. Naruto also took up learning kenjutsu and kendo from Megumi, who had forged him a sword out of one of a fang that she had shed. He wasn't invincible with a blade, goodness no, but he was definitely making excellent progress, having become a mid-chunin level swordsman. Anyway, back to the here and now. Naruto watched as his family headed out the gate and into the village, leaving him alone in the house once again. He closed his curtain and turned around to look at his room. It was actually quite Spartan, having only his bed, a dresser, and a desk. On that desk was a folded piece of paper with a wax seal keeping it closed. It was a letter written by Naruto himself. The young man reached under his desk and opened a secret compartment that he had made. It opened up to reveal a beautiful blade. It was an O-katana with a red hilt, a rectangular-shaped guard, and a red sheath with a majestic kitsune carved into it. The blade itself was a beautiful silver color and had the Japanese kanji for wandering fox carved along the length of the blade. "The time has come at last," Naruto said as he set his sword at his hip. "So, you're still going through with the plan, Naruto?" Megumi asked. "Yeah. I'll leave tonight while everyone's busy at Mito's birthday party. By the time they notice I'm missing, if they even bother to check, I'll be long gone and far away from this cesspool of a village," Naruto replied through their mental link. That's right, it was Naruto and his sister's birthday today. Although, it may as well have just been Mito's since nobody ever celebrated Naruto's birth after his 4th birthday. As there was going to be a big party tonight to celebrate, Naruto planned to use this time while everyone was distracted to leave the village. He quickly pocketed his cell phone after disabling the tracer that he knew his father had placed in there for both him and his sister in case of an emergency and sat down on his bed to wait for nightfall. I just hope you have a plan for afterwards. Knowing the old fools on this village's council, especially a certain warhawk that's been stalking you since day one of your life, they're not going to let one of their precious weapons leave the village that easily, Megumi said, referring to Danzo. Don't worry, Megumi-chan. I'll figure something out. For now, I just have to roll with the punches, Naruto said. Although mentally he was preparing himself for the worst. Minato Namikaze sighed within his office. He had to take care of some last-minute work and had returned to his office after having lunch with his wife and daughter. Honestly, sometimes he thought that Hiruzen sacrificed himself all those years ago just so he could get away from the eternal menace to every governing body known as paperwork. He could use shadow clones to do the job, sure, but it was just a small stack of paper this time, so he figured he might as well take care of it personally. Though, he was beginning to regret that choice. Request from Civilian Councilwoman Haruno to cut funding from the academy in order to build a civilian shopping center, denied. Motion to have civilian mob that attacked Naruto released from prison, big fat denied, Minato said, scowling at each new page. He had been aware of the civilians and their attacks on his son for years now. He's tried his hardest to prevent these attacks, but it seems that the stupid civilians just can't get it through their thick heads that their actions have consequences. Especially when said citizens are drunk. The next form he picked up was actually one that seemed like a good one. Request from Sume Inuzuka for an arranged marriage between Naruto and her daughter, Hana. I'll have to have her come to my office to discuss this in greater detail, Minato said to himself, setting that form in a pile labeled, undecided. He actually found similar requests from various clan heads and kunoichi as he went through his paperwork. One from Hiyashi asking to marry his daughter, Hinata, to Naruto. One from Mikoto for her daughter, Satsuki, who was Sasuke's older twin sister by 3 minutes. She's a nice girl, much better company than Sasuke who got too much of his father, Fugaku's, attitude. And a highly skilled upcoming kunoichi to boot. He also got one, surprisingly, from Enko Midarashi of all people. Each of these papers went into the pile as Minato made a mental note to call a meeting with the clan heads involved, along with Enko, so they could speak about these possible arrangements. But looking after these forms, Minato couldn't stop the guilt and sadness from filling his being. It would seem as though his actions regarding his son were finally hitting home. And they were giving him a great big slap in the face as he realized what a fool and pathetic father he'd been to Naruto. He remembered how he had fainted when Kushina had announced that she was pregnant and how excited they both had been when they learned that they were having twins. Then the night of the sealing came, and he was fully prepared to sacrifice his life to seal the fox into his children. But Sarutobi intervened and did the sealing instead, giving his life to do so. From that day on, knowing that his children would have difficult lives as Jinchuriki, even with himself and Kushina alive and there to raise them, Minato had vowed to himself that he would raise his kids with all of the love and care that they needed. But then Jiraiya came along and told them of that damn prophecy. Minato didn't understand why, but he was so quick to jump to the conclusion that it was his daughter who was the child of prophecy and he and Kushina seemed to shift their attention solely towards Mito. He knew why he shifted his focus, though, it was because of the Nine Tails young half that was sealed within Mito. Originally, he had wanted to help his daughter gain control of its power early because the young half seemed to be far more aggressive and malevolent than the yin half had felt. So, he felt that Naruto's training could wait, at least when it came to controlling the yin half's chakra. But when he checked both of his children's seals, he hadn't felt any demon chakra from Naruto's seal. It was as if nothing had been sealed in his son to begin with. Like the yin half died because it wasn't strong enough to sustain itself without its other half. He didn't know how true that was, but he didn't question it at the time. Neither did Kushina, for that matter. The fourth Hokage sighed and looked at 2 framed photographs on his desk. One was of himself, his wife, and his 2 children when they were just 6 months old. Minato had been holding Mito while Kushina held Naruto, both parents beaming with pride and love for their little ones. Mito had been dressed in a green frog onesie that his sensei had given to her while baby Naruto was dressed in an adorable blue dragon onesie with the hood over his head. Both babies were giggling and reaching for the camera in the picture, though in reality they had been reaching for their Tsunade Bon who had taken that picture. The second picture filled Minato with sadness. It was a framed photograph that was taken when Mito and her brother had joined the academy. Mito had a big grin on her face and was holding up 2 victory signs while her mother had one hand on her right shoulder and was holding a victory sign with a toothy grin of her own. Minato stood to his daughter's left and was wearing his signature cloak and had a proud smile on his face. Kakashi knelt down next to Mito with an eye smile, while Jiraiya and Tsunade stood to either side of Minato and Kushina. Jiraiya had a big smile while Tsunade had pumped her fist in the air at her goddaughter's accomplishment. But there was one person missing from the photo. Naruto was nowhere to be seen in this photo. The fourth Hokage couldn't help but feel that he was responsible for pushing his son away like this to the point that he wouldn't appear in any of the family portraits, especially one for a milestone like this one. Narrowing his eyes, Minato made his choice then and there. "Screw this paperwork. I need to set things right with my son," he exclaimed. He quickly shut and locked the window to his office, made a few shadow clones to handle the paperwork in his absence, threw on his cloak, and flashed out of his office to his home. Unknown to Minato, he had closed the window just as Jiraiya was about to jump into his office, causing the Toad Sage to cartoonishly slam against the window, slowly peel off, and fall from the top floor of the Hokage Tower and have a Wile E. Coyote landing. "Streets of Konoha, Ni-chan, Ni-chan, where are you?" Mito called out as she ran through the village. She had been searching for her brother for the better part of the afternoon, since he hadn't been in the compound when she and their mother had gotten home, but she had no luck in her search. And it had been like this for as long as she could remember. Back when they were little children, and even nowadays, people Mito's age would only ever want to be friends with her. There were also those who would only try to befriend her brother so they could get closer to her. And every day after classes at the academy she would be hoarded by her friends and the boys who would be trying to win her over, causing her to lose track of her brother every time she tried to talk to him. And as she had learned from experience, he could be highly elusive when he wanted to be. And this appeared to be one of those times. Mito sighed as she stopped running and slumped forward in defeat. She definitely wasn't going to be finding her brother that easily. She had remembered that it was their birthday and she wanted to hang out with her brother before the party tonight and try to break through the cold shell that he had developed over the years. But it looked like she wasn't going to get that chance. But then she noticed a shinobi store that sold really high-quality ninja gear. Weapons, clothes, the works. Mito couldn't stop the big smile forming on her face. She may not be able to spend time with him, but she can at least get him a high-quality birthday present. Mito immediately rushed into the store and began to browse. Uzunami clan compound. Back at the Uzunami compound, Kushina was in the kitchen getting ingredients ready for supper that night. It was her children's birthday and she wanted to go all out for their special day. That line of though caused the semi-retired Kunoichi to pause as she was about to open the fridge. Her thoughts drifted to her eldest twin, Naruto. She remembered in their childhood how she and her son used to be so close, and how he had been such a happy ball of sunshine whose smile could bring happiness to anyone, even if they were having a bad day. But that all changed when she and Minato had started training Mito in their clan arts and how to control the yang half of the Nine Tails chakra. He had started to become cold and distant, and he didn't join them on any family outings. And now that she thought about it, she couldn't even remember the last time she celebrated the twins' birthday with both of her children. And that was a very bad thing since they share the same birthday. She instantly felt like the worst mother on the face of the planet. Kushina has never wanted her son to feel alone and isolate himself from his own family, and yet she and her husband had done exactly that. Whether they meant to or not, how could she have allowed herself to favor one child over the other? She knew why she did, though. It was because of Jiraiya and that stupid prophecy. Like her husband, she too had mistakenly jumped to the conclusion that the yin half of the Nine Tails had somehow, for lack of a better term, died soon after the sealing due to being unable to handle the stress and left Naruto as a Jinchuriki without a Biju. So, she and her husband had shifted their focus towards Mito, who they knew still had half of the Nine Tails sealed within her. And now, her actions were coming back to haunt her. Kushina remembered the vague glances of photographs in her family albums from when Naruto was 4 years old onward. How he seemed to be distancing himself from the family more and more as he got older until he just stopped appearing in them altogether. She remembered how when he was younger, he would ask them for training to become a strong ninja like them, but instead of allowing him to join Mito in her training, they all had brushed him aside and told him that he had to wait until he and Mito were old enough to be enrolled in the academy. Herself included. Kushina felt like such an idiot for her actions and wanted to go back in time and slap her past self across the face before ripping her a new asshole for her neglect towards her son. Determination replaced her sense of guilt as she resolved to make up for her neglect towards her son. And the first step would be preparing a nice, hearty dinner that she knew her son would love. She may have neglected her son, unintentionally or otherwise, as much as it pains her to admit that, but she knew enough about him to know that he didn't like ramen as much as she and Mito did. She still wasn't sure why that was, but she did know a recipe that she knew he would enjoy. As Kushina went back to grabbing ingredients, she heard the door slam open and saw her daughter and husband at the door clamoring to get their sandals off as they tried not to fall over. "Whoa, You guys look like you just ran all over the village twice. Yano, what's gotten into you? Kushina asked. I need to talk to you both, Kushina. It's about Naruto. Minato replied as he finally got his sandals off and went to remove his cloak. That's what I needed to talk to you guys about, exclaimed Mito. I guess we're all on the same page, then, Kushina said. Mito took a seat at the table while Minato moved to wrap his arms around Kushina's waist and pull her into a hug from behind. What is it, Kushi-chan? What's wrong? Minato asked. It's Naruto. We've neglected him so badly, and it took me until just now to realize what we were doing. I pushed my baby boy away, Kushina explained, tearing up a little. Minato turned her around and cupped the side of her face in his hand, wiping her tears away with his thumb. A look of understanding and regret made its way to his face. I know, Kushina. I've realized the same thing, and I want to try and reconcile with Naruto and bring him back into the family. And the first step starts today. After dinner, I'm going to offer to start training Naruto in our family arts, Minato said. Kushina smiled and said, I'm sure he'll love that. Does that mean that Ni-chan is going to train with me? Mito asked excitedly. Minato just nodded, smiling as he had a feeling that he would succeed in mending the rift between his son and the family. It may be a long process, and it's likely that Naruto won't be so forgiving right away, but Minato is at least semi-certain that he will succeed in restoring the bond he had with his estranged son. The family was broken from their thoughts when the door opened and slammed shut. They looked over to see Naruto covered in cuts and bruises, with many of the cuts bleeding a lot. And he appeared to be favoring his left leg over his right, as if his leg was broken. Damn villagers not knowing the difference between the sword and its sheath, can't believe they got the drop on me, Naruto silently grumbled. Oh my Kami, Naru-chan, what happened? Gasped Kushina. Naruto didn't even spare her a passing glance on his way to the stairs as he answered, training accident. I got carried away and got myself hurt because of it, clumsy me. Minato, Kushina, and Mito didn't buy that excuse for a second, with Minato having a pretty good idea how his son really got those injuries but didn't force the issue. They didn't want to make the rift between themselves and Naruto greater than it already was. Sighing in resignation as Naruto ascended up the stairs, each member of the family went to do their own thing. For Minato, that meant discreetly sending out Anbu to arrest all those involved in his son's latest beating. Mito needed to wrap her brother's birthday gift, and Kushina shifted her focus to preparing dinner for her family. Hours went by and Naruto had finished meditating to keep his anger in check. And the way he did this was by sparring against Megumi in his mindscape. It really helped him vent his anger and not let it build up until he exploded. Goodness knows what the village council of idiots would try to do if he suddenly started killing civilians and ninjas of the village. It was actually a good way to vent and quite productive as he learned much about taijutsu and kenjutsu from the now 10-tailed vixen, who was more than happy to spar with him and listen as he ranted. He looked to the digital clock on his wall and saw that it was just about dinner time, and his nose caught a pleasant aroma. Orange chicken, white rice with green onion and a touch of lemon zest, freshly steamed vegetables, is the world coming to an end? Naruto quickly bolted to his window and looked up at the sky, as if scanning for any looming threats. When he saw none, he breathed a sigh of relief. Thank Kami, the sky's not falling, Naruto said with a sigh. Is it really that surprising that Kushina cooked such a meal tonight? Your reactions seem rather excessively dramatic, Megumi asked. Considering her and Mito's addiction to that stuff that they shovel down their gullets on a near-daily basis, I'd say my reactions were pretty tame, Naruto replied. Fair point, conceded Megumi. Naruto Nichan, Ka-san says dinner's ready, Mito called from the stairs. Figuring he shouldn't test their patience tonight and potentially ruin his plans to escape, Naruto quickly left his room and washed up before descending down the stairs. To his surprise, he found his parents and sister sitting at the table waiting for him. He raised an eyebrow as he took his seat at his usual spot, picked up his chopsticks and began to eat, and only then did the others start eating their dinner. Okay, what the actual hell is going on here? For the longest time they've treated me like I don't even exist, and now they're suddenly taking an interest in me? Naruto mentally questioned. Perhaps they've finally realized that they have a son, and in your sister's case, a brother, Megumi suggested with a scowl. Yeah? Well, they had their chance to include me in their family long ago, and they blew it. I'm not about to forgive them that easily, Naruto said to the Biju. So, kids, how have classes at the academy been going? Minato asked in an attempt to make conversation. They're going great. I think I might just make the top kunoichi spot if I keep doing so well, Mito said with a smirk. Kushina couldn't help but giggle at her daughter's behavior. Mito's exactly like she was when she, Kushina, was that age. Well, that's good, Mito, and what about you, Naruto? Minato asked. Naruto just closed his eyes as he took a bite of rice. Classes are going fairly well, although, if I may be blunt, the lessons are boring and quite unnecessary, Naruto said. Don't you think that's a little harsh, Naruto? I mean, sure the theory behind the subjects might be kinda boring, but the lessons themselves. You misunderstand, Hokage-sama, Naruto said, not noticing Minato's wince at the use of his title. The lessons are boring because I already know all of the material. I simply choose not to flaunt my knowledge and don't care for becoming Rookie of the Year. Titles are meaningless in a ninja's career, anyway. That got some shocked looks from both parents and daughter alike. They had no idea that Naruto was so far ahead of his classmates, and if he was as skilled as he was suggesting, he probably could have graduated from the academy years ago if he wanted to. But it seems he just didn't want to. Naruto quickly finished his meal and went to put his dishes in the sink so he could wash them when he was stopped by Kushina. Naru-chan, you don't need to do that. I can wash your dishes for you, Kushina offered. That won't be necessary. I don't wish to burden you more than I already have, Naruto said. That one really hurt Kushina, Minato, and Mito. Did he really think of himself as a burden to them? Boy, they really screwed up worse than they thought. As Naruto finished washing his dishes, he was about to go upstairs when Minato stopped him and asked him to wait in the living room for a moment. While suspicious about their intentions, Naruto nodded and remained in the living room as he waited for Minato and the others. It didn't take long for them to finish eating before the family was gathered in the living room. So, why have you asked me to wait for you? Naruto asked. Well, son, your mother and I have been talking and we've decided that we're going to start your training in our family styles today, Minato said. Isn't this exciting, Naru-chan? You'll get to learn all about the Uzumaki sword style and our clan's Fuinjutsu. Not to mention you'll learn your father's hummingbird style taijutsu and the Rasengan. And best of all, you'll get to train alongside your sister. I decline. Kushina stopped mid-sentence upon hearing her son's words. Had she heard him right? Did he really just decline the opportunity to learn their family styles? What do you mean you decline? Gasped Minato. I mean exactly as I said. I decline your offer to be trained in your styles, Naruto said with his arms crossed. But why, Naruto-ni? Don't you want to train together? Mito asked sadly. Once upon a time, when I was a little boy, I did want to train with you and our parents. But those hopes and dreams were dashed when I turned 7 years old. The way I see it, there are only 2 reasons you decided to train me. Reason 1 is to keep up appearances. It would be seen as a sign of weakness if the eldest child of a clan head is seen as weak by the rest of the villagers, so you training me is a way to save face with the rest of the village. Naruto explained. Minato's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. That wasn't what he was thinking at all, but he just couldn't form the words to tell his son that. Or it could be option 2, you see me as the village weapon. And a weak weapon is a useless weapon, so you wish to train me to be strong even when I can't use Biju Chakra like Mito here. That way you can unleash me on the enemy in times of war, just as the Tsuchikage would do to the Jinchuriki of the Hidden Stone Village. Naruto theorized. Now that one really hurt, to be compared to the Tsuchikage. It's no secret how the village hidden in the stone treats its Jinchuriki as outcasts and sees them as expendable weapons to be used against their enemies. So, no, I will not accept any training from you, and will continue to get stronger on my own, Naruto said. With that, he ascended up the stairs and back to his room, leaving a devastated family behind. Minato wrapped his arms around his wife and daughter as he attempted to comfort them, but he too was feeling pain and regret. Pain that his own son thought so little of him, and regret in knowing that he caused his son to feel that way. What do we do now, Minato-kun? Kushina asked through her tears. I don't know, Kushi-chan. I truly don't know, Minato replied, but I'm not giving up on my son. And so, Minato spent the better part of an hour just sitting on the couch comforting his wife and daughter as they cried out their sorrows. Later that night, it was 9 o'clock at night and the twins' birthday party was now in full swing. Although most of the guests were only there for Mito. Adults were mingling and talking about various grown-up subjects. The youngest children in attendance were playing games that had been set up to keep them entertained, and all of Mito and Naruto's classmates from the academy were in attendance. Naruto stood off to the side with a neutral expression as he just watched everything go on. He couldn't care less about these frivolous activities. He stopped caring after his 9th birthday where they had only celebrated for Mito. There was a large stack of presents on the table from various guests, though he was sure that they were all for Mito. Naruto couldn't stop himself from glaring at his sister as she talked with her friends, Sakura, Ino, and Tenten, the 4 girls gossiping about who knows what. Deciding that he needed to be alone before he unintentionally blew his top at someone, Naruto made for the stairs to go to his room. Not one for festivities, are you? Naruto turned around, having recognized the voice. It was one of his father's former teammates, Hiyashi Hyuga, and his eldest daughter, Hinata. Naruto's eyes softened considerably at the sight of the girl he protected from bullies when they were 6. Hinata had long midnight blue hair that grew down to the small of her back, pale skin, and the signature pupilless white eyes of the Hyuga Kekkei Genkei, the Byakugan. Although hers were tinted a soft lavender, she was wearing a formal kimono and had a heavy blush on her face as she looked at him. Clutched in her hands was a wrapped box that was obviously a present. "Oh, Lord Hyuga. Good evening," Naruto greeted formally. Hiyashi had a friendly smile on his face as opposed to his normally stoic facade that he usually wore in public and formal settings. "It's bad for your emotional health if you don't socialize," Hiyashi advised. "Unfortunately, socializing isn't so easy for me, as I'm sure you know, Lord Hyuga." "Believe me, I've tried with very little success," Naruto replied. "So instead of partaking in the festivities you choose to retire for the night, people will worry," Hiyashi said. Naruto knew that the elder Hyuga was right, but he couldn't stand the atmosphere of this party any longer. It was all about his sister as it has been for the past 13 years, and Naruto didn't want to be in the presence of so many people who ignored his very existence for any longer than he had to. He knew that the few friends that he had made in the village might be upset if they didn't see him tonight, but he needed to clear his head. "Well, I haven't been one for parties since I was 4, so..." Naruto didn't need to finish that sentence. Hiyashi and his daughter understood what he was saying quite well. "Did you need something, sir?" Naruto asked. "Not me, personally. But my daughter has something she would like to give to you," Hiyashi said, placing an encouraging hand on Hinata's shoulder. Hinata's blush deepened so much that she would make strawberries green with envy as she stepped forwards and held her present out to Naruto. "Anyo, happy birthday, NN Naruto-kun," she stuttered. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise and happiness. You actually got me a present, Hinata-chan?" Naruto asked as he accepted the gift. Hinata could only nod as she watched her crush examine the box before he began to unwrap it. Opening the lid, Naruto reached inside and pulled out a pair of green goggles with lenses that were tinted orange. They looked a lot like the goggles that belonged to his father's dead student who he's seen old pictures of. Obito Uchiha, if Naruto was remembering right. They felt like they were made from really high-quality material, too. Naruto didn't know why he did, but he wrapped his arms around Hinata, bringing her into a hug as he thanked her for her gift. Naturally, this caused Hinata's blush to reach atomic levels as her whole body turned red and steam seemed to be coming off of her head. "And Naruto is hugging me," Hinata thought with a combination of embarrassment and joy. Embarrassment due to her own shy nature, mostly because of the crowd of partygoers who weren't really paying attention, not that she knew that, and joy at being hugged by the man she deeply admired and truly loved. Inevitably, this led to Hinata having a fainting spell in Naruto's arms as she slumped over, still red all over and now with swirly eyes, much to her father's humor. Naturally, Naruto was concerned over Hinata's fainting spell. He wasn't as dense as people thought. He's seen the signs of Hinata's attraction to him. But he was concerned that her fainting spells could be the result of a medical condition. Hiyashi chuckled and took his daughter into his arms as he laid her on a nearby sofa to recover. Naruto was left perplexed by what had happened but chose to move past it. Even though he could hear Megumi's melodious giggling within his mindscape. "Wait, melodious? Where'd that come from?" "Ah, you shameless flatterer, you," Megumi said. Naruto mentally scowled as he could practically feel her teasing grin. "I hate it when you read my thoughts," he said to Megumi. "Then stop thinking out loud," quipped Megumi. "Oh, there you are, Naru-chan." Naruto was broken from his conversation with his tenant as Mikoto, the matriarch of the Uchiha clan and 2 of her children, Itachi Uchiha and his little sister, Satsuki. Unlike her younger twin, Satsuki is actually a stark contrast from the stereotypical Uchiha, taking after her mother in personality and looks. She has the iconic pale skin, black hair and onyx eyes of her clan, but her eyes shined with a warmth found in very few members of the Uchiha who usually were filled with arrogance and pride. About as much as the Hyuga clan council of elders who Hiyashi was trying to disband so that he could finally abolish that wretched seal that keeps his clan divided. But we're getting off topic. Like Hinata, Satsuki was wearing a formal kimono, except hers was red with golden flower petals embroidered on it. Naruto was brought into a hug by Mikoto, who was honestly more of a motherly figure to Naruto than Kushina had been for many years. "Happy birthday, Naru-chan," Mikoto said. "Thank you, Mikoto-ka-san," Naruto said with a small smile. "We're glad we caught you before you decided to get away from the party. We wanted to give you these," Itachi said as he pulled a scroll out from his kunai pouch. Inside this scroll are several ninjutsu and genjutsu techniques that our clan has copied over the years using our Sharingan. I've also included a copy of our clan's Interceptor Fist Taijutsu style in case you wanted to expand your arsenal. Naruto accepted the scroll with a grateful smile. Unfortunately, Anko-chan couldn't make it to the party since she's on a mission away from the village, but she did ask me to give you this, Makoto said as she pulled out a sealing scroll. Unraveling the scroll, she unsealed a beautiful wakizashi sword in a plume of smoke. The hilt was wrapped in black cloth and had 2 golden tassels attached to the pommel, while the guard was rectangular and gold in color. The sheath of the blade was made from finely carved and stained cherry wood that was treated with chakra to make it impervious to cracks, mold, and decay. This blade is Anko's way of showing her support for you. Follow your heart, Naruto, and you will find your path in life, Makoto advised. Naruto held the weapon like it was a priceless artifact. Thank you, Makoto Ka-san. And please, tell Anko-chan that I said thank you as well, Naruto said gratefully as he holstered his new blade on his belt. Makoto just nodded and said that she would. Happy birthday, Naruto. I know how much you don't really like shinobi-style clothes and think they're uncomfortable, so I got you an outfit that I thought would make you look good and feel comfortable in, Satsuki said as she held a wrapped package out to Naruto. Naruto rose an eyebrow as he opened the gift but found himself elated as he saw the contents. It was an outfit like those that the more traditional samurai warriors wore. Satsuki, this is so sweet, exclaimed Naruto. He set the box on a nearby desk and reached inside to pull out the contents. Satsuki shuffled her foot bashfully as she said, I hope you like it. I wasn't sure if it was your style or not. With a big smile, Naruto first pulled out a pair of wooden clogs and a pair of dark brown, tabi, socks. It's perfect, Naruto said, never losing his smile. Hopefully, it's the right size, Satsuki said, though it sounded like a question. Next, Naruto pulled out a neatly folded tan-colored shitage kimono, a burnt orange obi sash, and a pair of dark brown hakama pants, once again, neatly folded. Satsuki, I love it, Naruto said, and he really did. Over the years, during his training, Naruto found himself growing more and more inclined towards wearing more traditional clothes that samurai wore, since, to him at least, the more modern, hip, ninja clothing just didn't seem to fit him right and always felt very uncomfortable. Especially the mesh armor that ninja wear under their clothes. He would have bought himself some traditional samurai clothes, but he could never get his hands on any since he lived in a ninja village. Satsuki must have had this outfit custom made and special ordered from the land of iron where samurai are still trained in large numbers. Satsuki smiled and relaxed at that. Okay, I'm glad. I almost got you a leather jacket, but then I remembered that Mito is more into modern stuff. You're more into traditional clothes, so when I heard from Ka-san that we could order these clothes from the land of iron I just knew I had to get them for you, Satsuki said. And I'm very grateful, thank you all, Naruto said. He gave the 3 Uchihas a hug, and even gave Satsuki a little peck on the cheek, though he didn't know why he did that, and went upstairs to change into his new clothes, and begin the final phase of his plan. Makoto gave her daughter a knowing grin as she saw Satsuki standing there with wide eyes and a megawatt blush. But that blush quickly disappeared as she remembered something. Tonight's the night, isn't it? She asked somberly. The night that he finally. I'm afraid so, Satsuki Masumi. Makoto said quietly. He's finally leaving the village and pursuing his own destiny. I know that you don't want him to leave. We don't either. But I think that we can all agree that this is the best course of action for him to take. His growth will merely be stunted in this village because of all of the bigots here. Not to mention that the council will attempt to do everything in their power to take away whatever happiness Naruto manages to find. Satsuki stayed quiet. She knew that her mother was right, but that doesn't mean that she has to like it. Hopefully, the party will give Naruto a long enough head start, Itachi said. In any case, we'd better go mingle. Best to avoid looking suspicious. Both Uchiha women nodded and went to rejoin the party. Back in Naruto's room, he had just changed into his new clothes and was looking himself over in a full-body mirror. He had a big smile as he holstered his okatana and wakizashi in his obi sash. Finally, he put the goggles that he got from Hinata on in a style similar to a ninja headband. He figured that Hinata's gift would come in handy to keep debris out of his eyes. And he found that these ones were, surprisingly, very comfortable to wear. He honestly expected the straps to pull on his hair, but they didn't. That Uchiha girl has good taste, Naruto. The new look suits you, Megumi said. Thanks, Megumi-chan. Before we leave, come into your mindscape for a moment, please. I have something I need to discuss with you in person, Megumi said. Giving a mental nod, Naruto sat on his bed and began to meditate. He awoke in his mindscape and found Megumi in human form sitting in the shade beneath a large oak tree. Resting in her lap was a large scroll that was about half as tall as he was. Walking over to Megumi, he didn't need to say anything as Megumi set the scroll down between them and unfurled it a little to reveal blank spots on the parchment. "This is my gift to you, Naruto. You have come a long way from when you first started training, and I believe that now is the time for you to sign this. This is one of the 3 legendary summoning contracts, which will allow you to summon creatures so powerful that hardly any other summon is foolish enough to challenge them. They're not all powerful, mind you, but they're definitely much more powerful than the average creatures," Megumi said. "This is the summon scroll for the dragons. An ancient race that roamed the earth long before the time of the Sage of Six Paths. Their leader was a dear friend of mine when I was still part of Kurama, and he gave me the scroll to safeguard until a worthy summoner was found. And I believe that you are more than worthy, Naruto." Naruto was floored. Megumi was really letting him sign a contract for a race of creatures that powerful? Honestly, he didn't feel that he was worthy of doing so. But he trusted Megumi's judgment and kneeled down next to the scroll. "Thank you, Megumi-chan. I promise to do everything in my power to prove myself worthy of it," he said. Megumi gave him a warm smile, as he had already proven himself more than worthy in her eyes. "Now, you won't be able to summon the dragons until you sign the contract. This isn't as simple as writing your name in ink. You must use your own blood in order to sign the contract and make a pact with the summon animal. Then leave a set of bloody fingerprints from the hand you wish to use for summoning. Be sure to infuse your chakra into your blood as you're signing, or it won't work," Megumi instructed. Naruto nodded and bit his thumb, drawing blood which he quickly used to write his signature on the first blank square, pumping chakra into his blood as he did. Then he pressed the tip of each of his remaining fingers against his bloody thumb and pressed them down beneath his signature. His signature glowed blue for a brief moment before the glow died down. Megumi quickly rolled the scroll back up and it vanished in a poof of smoke. "There. The contract has been signed. To use the summoning jutsu you must weave the signs, boar, dog, bird, monkey, and ram. Then pump as much chakra as you can into the jutsu in order to summon the boss of the contract. He will test you to see if you are worthy to summon the dragons. You should do this once you're a marginally safe distance away from the village," Megumi explained. "Now, you should get going. You only have a small window of opportunity to make your escape." Naruto nodded and exited his mindscape. His eyes snapped open as he quickly left a letter on his pillow for someone to find should they enter his room, though he thought it was unlikely that anyone would. Opening the window, he jumped out the window into the darkness and began to make his way out of the village. By the time anyone would notice he was missing, it would be too late, and he would be long gone. Or at least that's what he thought. Within the kingdom of the Shinto pantheon sat the goddess who stood above them all, and the strongest of her pantheon, though she didn't have the power of the one who stood above the deities of every pantheon. Kami was an exceedingly beautiful woman with wheat-colored skin, long black hair that, when standing, almost touched the floor, sharp dark green eyes, and a womanly figure that most professional models would absolutely kill for. She was garbed in a flowing white kimono with golden trim, a light blue obi sash, a pair of tabi socks, and geta sandals. And as she sat upon her throne and watched the events playing out in the ninja lands, she grew more and more furious. You see, Kami had foretold of a prophecy in the very early days of the ninja lands, before Kagaya had eaten the fruit of the Shinju tree, before the Sage of Six Paths was born, and especially before Shinobi and Kunoichi learned how to harness chakra. The prophecy stated that a child would be born of 2 wise and powerful ninjas, one of fire and one of swirling tides. This child would grow up bearing a terrible burden and would grow to become a powerful warrior who followed their heart in all of the choices they would make. And when the time was right, the child of prophecy would make a choice to either unite the ninja lands and bring everlasting peace, or they would destroy the ninja lands and bring about peace. Kami honestly hoped for the former but wouldn't interfere if the ninja lands were destroyed either. Either way, peace is brought about. But what made her so furious was that those stupid toads had broken a sacred taboo and told mortals of the prophecy that she had foretold. No one was meant to know this, but every summon animal, from the common tapirs to the Sannin summons of the slugs, toads, and snakes, and even up to the legendary summons such as the dragons and the gargoyles, knew about the prophecy. It was common knowledge in the summon realm, really. But the summons all followed a sacred taboo that forbids them from ever revealing the prophecy to mortals, because once mortals learn of the prophecy, they will go to great lengths to manipulate it to suit their desires. And that is exactly what happened because those slimy toads couldn't keep their mouths shut and blabbed the prophecy to a now elderly lecher who can't keep his nose out of things that don't involve him. It all began the night of the birth of her child of prophecy. Now, everyone in the Uzunami family believed that the youngest twin, Mito, is the child of prophecy that Kami spoke of. But in reality, it was the elder twin, Naruto, who was the true child of prophecy. Unfortunately, Kami's prophecy immediately began to spiral out of control as Kurama, the nine-tailed demon fox, was ripped from Kushina's seal by Minato's long-thought-dead student, Obito Uchiha, who now went by the alias Tobi. Tobi then used his Sharingan. Kami cursed her drunken shenanigans for creating such cursed eyes, to take control of Kurama and have him attack Konohagakure in a vain attempt to destroy the village and kill everyone in it. Fortunately, Minato had come up with a plan to stop Kurama, though it was a rather foolish plan. The Yondaime Hokage was going to use the dead demon-consuming seal to summon Kami's brother, the Shinigami, and have him seal the demon into his children at the cost of his own soul. This was avoided, however, when Hiruzen Sarutobi, the retired Sandaime Hokage, had knocked out Minato and took his place in the sealing of the beast. You already know what happened after that. Kami's eyes softened a little as she had noticed that her chosen one's parents and sister were beginning to break through the haze that had clouded their minds and genuinely regret neglecting Naruto as they did. But she also knew that Naruto's emotional scars ran deep, and he wouldn't be so willing to forgive them anytime soon. With a grumble, she stood up from her throne and walked towards her crystal ball. The very same crystal ball that she used to bring the prophecy into motion in the first place. Lighting her palms with holy flame and placing them on either side of the orb, her eyes began to glow as she witnessed the prophecy changing. From the shadows of hate and neglect, a warrior born with the power of the forest shall rise to the light. He shall join together with the warriors of flame, light, wind, ice, thunder, water, steel, earth, and darkness to fight off a great evil that threatens to consume both worlds. And through their combined power, the child of prophecy and warrior of wood shall unite both worlds and bring peace, or he shall destroy the material world and bring about peace, she said in a trance. As the vision ended, Kami looked upon the image of Naruto in the crystal ball and gave a small smile. She knew exactly what he was about to go through as he embarked on this new adventure. He would meet many new friends, make enemies, and she knew that, whatever his choice, he would fulfill the prophecy in the ninja lands and digital world would once again be at peace. Go forth, my champion. Face your destiny, she said with a smile, and punch a royal knight in the face for me. With that, she began walking to her viewing portal. The legendary warriors were about to be chosen and she didn't want to miss this. Besides, she had a sneaking suspicion that some people from beyond the ninja lands were about to be brought into a war that they won't be able to win so easily. Mortal realm, hey, thanks again for holding the door for me, man. I really don't feel like hitting my head any more than I already have today, said a young man with spiky brown hair and eyes. No problem. From what I can tell, we're both going to the same place so we might as well help each other, Naruto replied. Naruto was glad that Megumi was able to use that space-time technique of hers to transport them to Shibuya. Not long after he had left the village, Naruto had gotten a mysterious text message on his phone telling him to take the westbound train at the Shibuya station. He didn't really know what to make of this message or the mysterious voice that had read the message to him, but Megumi had always told him to follow his instincts, so he decided to follow those instructions and see where they led. Upon arriving at the station, Naruto followed a further set of instructions that led him to an elevator. He would have just gone down, but he saw someone rushing to get on. Naruto could have just let the doors close, true, but he wasn't about to be rude to this guy and he looked to be in a rush. So, he held the doors open so he could get in. So, I take it you got a message, too? The brown-haired boy asked. I did. I don't know why I got it or how this person got my number, but my gut told me to listen to the directions. Naruto said. Anyway, my name is Naruto. What's yours? I'm Takuya Kanbara. It's nice to meet you, Fishcake, he said with a friendly smile. Takuya is a young man around Naruto's age with lightly tanned skin, brown hair and eyes. He wears a yellow t-shirt with a black D-like symbol on the chest, under a red jacket with a pocket on each side of the chest, a dark brown Bermuda, light brown gloves, white socks, orange and red sneakers with white soles, and a light brown cap over which he puts his goggles. The cap leaves a tuft of his hair out in the front. A smile that lasted for about 2 seconds as Naruto was soon crouched in the corner of the elevator poking the ground with his finger, a depressed aura surrounding him as he muttered, "It's Maelstrom, damn it." Takuya chuckled sheepishly as he realized that Naruto's name was obviously the second meaning, not the first. It must be a running gag for the guy. But their attention was soon caught by the sounds of the elevator dinging. Both young men looked up and out the windows to see that the elevator was going faster as it began to descend past the ground floor and just kept going. Naruto stood up and kept his guard up. He had no way if this was the doing of enemy ninjas, but he couldn't afford to be off his guard. After what must have been 5 minutes, though it felt like hours, the elevator finally stopped with a strong thud. As it opened, Naruto and Takuya were caught by surprise when they saw all of the different trains in the room. "Now where are we?" Takuya asked. "If I knew I'd tell you," Naruto replied. Both men looked at their phones as they received another message, but this time it was accompanied by a strange black symbol upon an orangey-white background. The symbol itself looked like a dot surrounded by 4 half-circles and 4 prongs. Neither of them knew the meaning of that symbol, but it felt like it was important. "It's up to you now. Which one will you choose?" the voice asked. Which one are you gonna choose?" Takuya asked Naruto. "Follow me," he replied. The young samurai ran off towards the pinkish-brown train with Takuya close behind. They made it onto the train just as the clock chimed and the doors to all of the trains closed. Naruto looked out the window to see that all of the trains, including theirs, were leaving the station. Well, there's no turning back now, Naruto thought to himself. They both looked around and saw that they were the only ones in that particular cart. "Man, there's no one here. It's like a ghost train," Takuya said. "More logically, the others are in another cart. Let's check it out," Naruto suggested. They moved to the next cart up and Naruto was proven right. Inside were 3 other people, 2 boys and 1 girl. The first boy was a young man who was about as old as Naruto and Takuya. He was a young, overweight man with spiky brown hair and eyes. He wears an orange shirt under a blue jumpsuit with yellow pockets, white socks, and blue and yellow sneakers. The girl looked to be about a year younger than Naruto, Takuya, and the boy in the blue jumpsuit. She had long chest-length blonde hair and green eyes. She wears a pink cap resembling a beanie with a purple trim and 2 points that resemble a cat's ears coming out of it. She also wears white and pink shoes and long purple socks. She wears a blue and white striped shirt under a pink vest paired with a pair of mid-thigh length blue denim shorts. The jacket has white vertical stripes on the sides. Her shirt is cut to expose her navel, and her jacket is also open. The last person in the car was a young boy who looked to be approximately 10 years old, if Naruto had to hazard a guess. The boy has light skin, short brown hair and green eyes. He wears a mustard-colored shirt under a white V-neck shirt with short sleeves, a dark green collar and dark green trimmings at the sleeves and the bottom. He also wears yellow shorts with 2 pockets at the front and red suspenders hanging loosely from the sides, orange socks, and white and green sneakers. On his head, he wears an oversized orange newsboy cap. As Takuya closed the door behind him, the 3 others looked up at them. "So, I take it you all got a message on your phones telling you to come here?" Naruto asked. The 3 of them nodded as Naruto and Takuya each took a seat with Naruto sitting next to the kid and Takuya choosing to sit next to the blonde girl. "So, who are all of you?" "My name's Takuya, and that's Naruto," Takuya asked. The overweight boy looked up and raised an eyebrow as he asked, "His name is Fishcake?" Once again, Naruto had an air of depression that caused Takuya to sigh while the other wondered if the overweight boy had said something wrong. Takuya just walked over to his new friend and pat him on the back as he explained. His name is actually meant to have the second meaning, maelstrom, not the first meaning which is basically a ramen topping. Personally, I think it's kind of a running gag for him at this point in his life. "Oh, sheesh, sorry about that, man. I really should have known better," apologized the overweight boy. "The name's JP Shibayama, but just call me JP. Everyone does. And my name is Zoe Orimoto. It's really nice to meet you both, Takuya and Naruto," the girl said. "If you don't mind me asking, Naruto, why are you wearing those clothes and have those swords? Are you a Ronin?" "In a manner of speaking. I was born in a ninja village and am self-taught in the ninja arts, but I have taken more towards the way of Bushido rather than the philosophies of ninjas. These swords are gifts from a couple of friends of mine, as are my clothes and goggles," Naruto replied as he unintentionally flashed a ladykiller smile at Zoe, causing her to blush. "As for my clothes themselves, I just have a preference for more traditional style of clothing rather than the more modern styles that civilians and even ninjas wear in this day and age." "You're trained in ninjutsu? Cool, so are we," JP said with a grin. "Each of us is from one of the minor hidden villages out there in the world and we had been visiting Shibuya for one reason or another when we had each gotten those messages," Zoe explained. "I was born in the land of waves where we have no shinobi village. But that's why I started training myself to become a ninja. So that I could train others to do the same and we could appeal to our daimyo to establish a ninja village in our land in order to protect ourselves." Takuya nodded and said, "That's quite the ambition there, Zoe. I was born in the village hidden in the grass and traveled to the land of fire with my family so I could find some scrolls to learn better control techniques for my fire element. Luckily, you guys don't come from the war-torn village hidden in the rain. I was born and raised there for most of my life, even training to become a ninja. But I'd rather not serve the tyrant we have there, So I fled and found myself here in Shibuya where I got that message and boarded the train. JP explained. None of them really knew how to respond to that. They just sat in awkward silence before Takuya said the first thing that came to mind. That's rough, buddy. Naruto and the others heard a sniffling sound as though someone was crying. They looked in the direction of the youngest member of their motley crew and saw him looking down and trying to avoid eye contact. A form of behavior that Naruto knew all too well due to his own childhood. Especially before he met Megumi. I'm Tommy, but I didn't want to get on this train, the boy said. What are you saying? Takuya asked. Since he was sitting next to the kid, he saw the years beginning to fall down Tommy's face as he tried to explain through his silent sobs. These two kids, bullies, pushed me on the train and shut the door. Tommy explained before asking through his sobs, why are kids always picking on me? Now, Naruto might not be the most in tune with sibling behavior as other people in the world, but he could relate to Tommy in a way. His peers always put him down for the littlest of things and favored his younger sister, Mito. And when they tried to befriend him, they only tried to do so in order to get closer to his sister. Still, Naruto was an older sibling, and those instincts from the few times when he and Mito were younger, and he would comfort her after a bad day, or a nightmare made their way to the surface as Naruto placed a comforting hand on Tommy's shoulder. It's okay, Tommy. You're safe now that you're with us, Zoe said. Naruto got out of his seat and knelt down to eye level with Tommy as he asked, do you need anything right now, little guy? Tommy looked at Naruto. His vision blurred a little bit because of his tears, but the 10-year-old slowly began to open up to the older boy. Hug, he asked uncertainly. Naruto just gave Tommy a smile and gently pulled the kid into a brotherly embrace, allowing Tommy to cry out his frustrations as the redhead rubbed comforting circles in Tommy's back. It's going to be okay, Tommy. They can't hurt you anymore, Naruto said. The moment was broken, however, when they heard the train give a toot-toot sound that sounded more like a voice rather than a train whistle. Suddenly, the lights went out and everyone was launched out of their seats and onto the floor as the train began to pick up speed. Naruto was the first to recover and open his eyes as he briefly saw in his reflection in the window a man in wooden armor over his own. Looking to the others, he saw similar beings overlapping them before these entities vanished. A man in flame-based armor for Takuya, a polar bear cub with some sort of gun on its back over Tommy. JP was a beetle man, and Zoe was some kind of fairy. Naruto looked down to his phone and saw that it was glowing. It vanished into particles of light and was replaced by a device that was two-toned brown with white buttons. What the hell is this? Naruto asked. Welcome to the digital world, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. This is your detector. The voice said from the device. Digital world? What are you talking about? Naruto asked. He quickly stood up and went to check on the others as he pocketed the device that replaced his phone, his detector. Dear Kami in heaven, what have I gotten myself into this time? Naruto thought to himself. Uzunami compound. 15 minutes have passed since Naruto left the village and the party was still in full swing and didn't seem like it would be dying down anytime soon. After Mito had blown out the candles of her and her brother's, though mostly hers, birthday cake, she had started opening her presents. Many of them were practical for ninja use, such as the many sets of kunai and shuriken that she got from her friends. Others were more for casual, civilian use, such as the various outfits that she'd been gifted from her female friends, particularly the Yamanaka clan heiress. And some were items that she'd consider irreplaceable, like the tri-pronged kunai knife that she got from her father and the katana that she had gotten from her mother. There was a small stack of gifts that were for Naruto, though obviously much smaller than the mountain of gifts that Mito received. And they were likely last-minute gifts that didn't have a lot of thought put into them. Anyway, Mito had just put the hunting dagger that she got from Kiba's mother, Sume, who was also one of her mother's best friends from childhood, on the desk next to her when Jiraiya had stepped up holding a large scroll with a grin on his face. It was a scroll that everyone, even Mito, had recognized. Happy birthday, Mito-chan. I hope that you like my gift to you, because my gift is to let you sign the Toad summoning contract, Jiraiya said. We'll begin your training in summoning after you become an official Hidden Leaf Kunoichi and have a few missions under your belt, so to speak. Admittedly, I probably should have talked with the boss Toad about this, but once he learns that you're Minato's kid I'm sure he won't mind. Tsunade scowled as a vein pulsed in her forehead, causing the elder Ino Shikacho trio who had been standing by her to take a couple steps back for their own safety. Even Kushina, who had been standing by Minato, sweat dropped at how her sensei was reacting to Jiraiya's gift. Not that the Uzunami matriarch could blame the Senju woman. She had been planning to have Mito sign the slug summoning contract for a long time now, and yet that pervy Toad she called a teammate beat her to the punch. And if Kushina's being honest, she doesn't know how to feel about her daughter being trained more by her husband's pervert sensei. Oh well. At least I can still teach her my super strength and see if she'd be interested in becoming a badass combat medic like myself. Tsunade thought to herself. Mito eagerly opened up the scroll as it was set in front of her. Her eyes were sparkling like stars as she saw the open slot next to her father's name. She already knew how to sign a summoning contract since her parents had taught her about that in the hopes that she'd be able to use that knowledge when she finally found a contract of her own, though they had been hoping she would find a unique summon animal of her very own. Mito quickly cut her thumb and signed the contract in her own blood, and as she finished a thought occurred to her. Pervy Granddad, can Nissan sign the contract, too? She asked. Her question caused all of the guests' eyes to widen, though none more so than Jiraiya and Tsunade. Had they really forgotten that today was also Naruto's birthday? Minato and Kushina looked around as they realized that they hadn't seen their son since their talk after dinner that night. Come to think of it, nobody had seen him since the party started. Though, confidentially, Hiyashi and his daughter, along with Makoto and her eldest son and daughter, had all seen him and given him their gifts as they knew what he was planning to do tonight. All they could think was that he must have been hiding out in his room because he didn't like being in crowds like this. Especially since almost all of the guests were there for Mito and not Naruto. The Toad Sage didn't really see this as a problem, but Tsunade felt like such a heel now that she stopped to think about her own behavior towards her godson. Jiraiya quickly recovered and said, "Sure, I don't think it'll be a problem. Come on, let's go find your father and give him the good news. He's probably upstairs in his room." As Mito rolled up the scroll and followed her godfather up the stairs, Tsunade followed close behind. There was no way in the 9 levels of hell that she was losing Naruto to the toads as well. They quickly arrived at Naruto's door, but as Mito raised her hand to knock on the door, she found herself hesitating. She hasn't been in her brother's room in years. Not since they were 4 years old and sharing a bedroom. She had no idea what his room was like or if he'd be okay with her going in there. Tsunade gave her an encouraging pat on the back which helped Mito work past her hesitance as she knocked on the door. "Ni-san, it's me, can I come in?" she asked through the door. She and her godparents remained silent for a moment, but they got no response. So, she knocked again, this time a little louder as she thought that he might not have heard her the first time. "Naruto ni, please don't ignore me. I just want to talk," Mito said a little louder. But still there was no response. "Oh, well, I guess he's asleep. We'll talk to him about signing the Toad contract tomorrow," Jiraiya said with a dismissive wave of his hand. But Tsunade had grabbed him by the shoulder before he could leave. "Nah, you're not slipping away from this that easily," she said, giving him a look. Jiraiya groaned from both annoyance and pain as he was dragged in front of the door. This time, Tsunade was the one to give 3 good knocks to Naruto's door, and cause it to fall off of its hinges and right onto the floor. The 3 sweat dropped as their eyes became blank white circles from embarrassment and slight anxiety at how Naruto would react. "Now, you've got 2 people to apologize to. Naruto for knocking down his door and Minato for damaging his house," Jiraiya said dryly. Tsunade knew her teammate was right but didn't say anything to him as she cleared her throat and composed herself. Naru-chan? You in here?" she called. "Sorry about the door, Naru-chan?" They looked around and saw just how barren Naruto's room was. Most kids added their own personal touch to their bedrooms, but this place looked as though nobody had ever been in here. There wasn't so much as a speck of dust or a faded space anywhere. And that honestly saddened Tsunade and Mito while only mildly bothering Jiraiya. There wasn't a single object of personal value or a photograph of good family memories anywhere. As Mito looked around, she noticed something on her brother's desk. "What's this?" she thought aloud. She picked up the folded letter and undid the wax seal. She unfolded the obvious letter and began to read, before letting loose an ear-splitting cry of anguish. Minato and Kushina were the first ones to run up the stairs to their daughter's aid, but when they got there what they found was their daughter curled into a fetal position as she cried her heart out while Tsunade tried to comfort her and Jiraiya reading what looked like a letter with a grim expression. "What happened to Mito? And where's Naruto?" Kushina asked. In response, Jiraiya gave her the letter and told her to read it. Though confused, she started reading the letter while Minato read over her shoulder. It was definitely Naruto's handwriting, and it was a great big punch to the gut about how badly they fucked up as parents to him. "Dear Namikaze-sama and Uzumaki-sama, by the time you read this, I will already have left the village. I honestly ask myself why I didn't leave sooner. I guess I was a naive fool who clung to the notion that one day the villagers would look past their hate and see me as a person, and that I might eventually be accepted as part of this family. But after 10+ years from the day I turned 4, it never happened. I truly was a fool. Let me be clear that I don't hate either of you, nor do I hate Mito, but I simply can't trust you anymore. You may have needed to train Mito to access and control the Nine Tails chakra, and I can understand why you needed to, but that was no excuse to just up and forget that you also had a son. I had always thought that parents loved their children unconditionally, but I guess I was wrong about that since you all acted like I didn't exist when I showed no signs of having the other half of the Nine Tails within me. Fortunately, I met a friend who was more than willing to help me learn the shinobi arts and grow as both a ninja and as a person. That friend helped me realize that this village and its blind hatred would only stunt my growth and destroy any chance I would ever have at happiness. And so, after careful consideration and much planning, I have left the village hidden in the leaves. Who knows, maybe I'll come back one day. But until that day comes, if ever. This is goodbye. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the Wandering Fox. Kushina trembled as her tears flowed freely down her face and onto the piece of paper. She almost fell back but was caught by her husband who held her in his strong arms as she buried her face in the crook of his neck. He didn't forgive us, he doesn't trust us, she managed to say. Minato's eyes hardened. Screw what those old bags of bones and entitled civilians on the council wanted. He knew what he had to do as both Hokage, and as a husband and father. Anbu. He shouted. 4 Anbu, each wearing a different animal mask, those being a giraffe, a wolf, a turtle, and a lion, appeared before the Hokage and kneeled as they awaited orders. Each of you gather a squad of tracker ninjas and meet me at the north gate in 10 minutes. My son has left the village. Minato exclaimed. We are to find him and bring him back alive and preferably unharmed. Minato looked out of his son's window as the light of the full moon illuminated the village that had a hand in driving away one of his children. I will not lose my son, he vowed. Welcome to the digital world, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. This is your detector. The voice said from the device. Digital world? What are you talking about? Naruto asked. He quickly stood up and went to check on the others as he pocketed the device that replaced his phone, his detector. Dear Kami in heaven, what have I gotten myself into this time? Naruto thought to himself. Kushina trembled as her tears flowed freely down her face and onto the piece of paper. She almost fell back but was caught by her husband who held her in his strong arms as she buried her face in the crook of his neck. He didn't forgive us, he doesn't trust us, she managed to say. Minato's eyes hardened. Screw what those old bags of bones and entitled civilians on the council wanted. He knew what he had to do as both Hokage, and as a husband and father. Anbu. He shouted. 4 Anbu, each wearing a different animal mask, those being a giraffe, a wolf, a turtle, and a lion, appeared before the Hokage and kneeled as they awaited orders. Each of you gather a squad of tracker ninjas and meet me at the north gate in 10 minutes. My son has left the village. Minato exclaimed. We are to find him and bring him back alive and preferably unharmed. Minato looked out of his son's window as the light of the full moon illuminated the village that had a hand in driving away one of his children. I will not lose my son, he vowed. Current time. Did you guys get that message? Naruto asked. He was met with silence, but the answer to his question would have been a resounding yes as Tommy, JP, Takuya, and Zoe now held detectors of their very own. Each one was a different color scheme from Naruto's, but they were all of the same basic design. Everyone suddenly covered their ears as the train they were on made a very loud woo-woo sound, which was very painful to the passengers of their train. Damn it, you can hear that from Mars, groaned Takuya. Watch the language, we have a kid on board, said Zoe, though she agreed with Takuya. But that's when they looked outside and saw what appeared to be a large swarm of ghosts. All of which looked like the stereotypical bedsheet with eye holes and a mouth, only much cuter. Although JP had commented that they could have been marshmallows. Zoe moved to the window to get a closer look, but she freaked out when one of the little ghosts smushed itself against the glass and made a rather freaky face. Zoe screamed and backed up until she was clinging to Naruto like a lifeline. Now, make no mistake, Naruto is a red-blooded man and he would normally be blushing up a storm if a beautiful woman such as Zoe was hugging him like this. But he was just blankly staring ahead as she was unintentionally digging her fingernails into his face while clinging to him as the ghosts went away. He poked Zoe on the shoulder and said, Zoe? Retract the claws, please. What? Zoe snapped out of it and immediately let go as she saw what she had done. Oh, right, sorry. She took a few steps back and tried to calm her racing heart while Megumi used her chakra to heal the minor puncture wounds that the young woman had left in her host's face. That's when they noticed a series of structures, most of which had chimneys with flames spewing from them. And their train was approaching the largest building. I bet that's the train station. Maybe we can get some answers there, Takuya suggested. It's worth a shot, Naruto said. I just hope there aren't any more of those ghost things there. Not that I was afraid, or anything, Zoe said, denying her earlier fear. Yeah, sure. I always scream in terror whenever I'm not afraid, JP quipped sarcastically. Zoe just scoffed in response while Naruto jabbed the larger young man in the ribs with his elbow. Don't antagonize her, JP. Besides, we're in unfamiliar territory so we need to stick together, Naruto said. He's right, Tommy said with a nod. The train soon came to a full stop and the doors all swung open with a hiss of steam. Everyone looked out and saw a rather large crowd of talking creatures. Each one looked like a purple blob with red eyes that were shaped like upside-down crescent moons, long ears, and cat-like mouths. Naturally, everyone was hesitant to get off around those things, but they were pushed off by a huge puff of steam that caused them all to tumble onto the ground. Woo, that first step's a doozy, said the train. You said it, partner, Naruto said as he got up. As the redhead was helping Zoe to her feet, Takuya asked, is it me or did the train just talk? Hey, I ain't just any old train, I'm Trailman, and I'm alive just like you. Although, I am a lot more handsome than you shriveled up pugs. Thank you very much, said the train, or rather, Trailman. Pug. Now, that's just insulting. If anything, I'm a fox, Naruto quipped. You know what, you're right about that, Whiskers. My bad, Trailman said. Anywho, this here is Flame Terminal and you're in the heart of a Digimon village. Digimon village? Takuya asked. He must be talking about the little guys who were crowding the train car doors, Naruto guessed. That's right, mister. We're Digimon, short for digital monsters, and you're in our village now, said one of the purple blobs. Are you gonna play with us now? Asked another. The locals had begun crowding the kids and it was making them all very uncomfortable. Especially Tommy, who looked ready to cry again. Fortunately for our young heroes, Naruto was there. And he had studied enough about politics in order to take a diplomatic approach. We would be happy to play with you guys, but I believe that introductions are required first, he said. The largest of the blobs, likely their leader, smiled sheepishly in response. You're right, sorry. Where are our manners? We are the Pagumon, and we're just one species that calls this village home, he said. Naruto gave them a friendly smile and said, It's a pleasure to meet you all, Pagumons. My name is Naruto, and these are my new friends. This is Takuya, Tommy, JP, and Zoe. Each teenager gave a small greeting, even though they were freaking out on the inside. And rightfully so. These creatures were like nothing they've ever seen in their world before, unless they're some sort of undiscovered species of animal summons. And last they checked, trains aren't alive like this Trailman is. Still, they opted to keep an open mind about it. Since most of them were training to be ninjas, being open-minded was the best way to gain relevant information when on scouting and espionage missions. If you don't mind us asking, but what exactly is a Digimon? We've never heard about them before, Zoe asked. You've never heard of Digimon? Asked one of the youngest Pagumon. Hey, don't get so worked up about it. They're humans, so of course they wouldn't know, said an older one. Trailman started backing up and said, Well, I wish I could tell you, but I can't stick around. The locals can explain what Digimon are to y'all, and if y'all want to go home you'll have to find a spirit, or something. JP couldn't keep the sarcastic remark to himself. Oh yeah, that'll clear everything up. What's a spirit, and where do we find one? Zoe asked. Unfortunately, Trailman was too far away to hear her and was now chugging along on his way to his next stop. Like actual train conductors, he's got a schedule to keep. JP muttered something about rude trains while Naruto adjusted his goggles which had been rendered slanted upon their rather rough landing. Whatever it is, it must be important enough that so many of us were brought to this place to find it, Naruto theorized. Takuya nodded and said, That makes sense. If it's that important, then there must be someone who wants it for one reason or another. So, we'll just have to find it first. But before that, a little explanation about what Digimon are would be appreciated. The largest Pagumon sheepishly scratched the back of his head with one of his long ears as he chuckled in response. Yeah, I guess some context is needed. You see, he began to say. But he couldn't finish that sentence because a sudden bright green glow caught their attention. Everyone looked and saw a wall of emerald green fire destroying everything in its path. As proven by how several buildings were turned into what looked like flowing barcodes. Look what you've dragged me into, exclaimed a voice. Nobody could do anything as Takuya found himself literally bowled over by two strange creatures. One of them was a bipedal creature with white fur on its body and a horned head with pointed ears, gray fur on the mouth, and black eyes. It has 3 claws on each hand and foot and wears a pink haramaki. The other one seems to be a rather skinny yellow rabbit creature with long pointed ears. It has stubby arms and wears overlarge red pants. Takuya groaned in pain from his new spot on the floor as the two creatures sat up, and the white one was immediately struck by a sense of awe. "It's a human," it said in a voice that was obviously male. "You think everything's a human," said the rabbit. "Don't start with me, you," the white one said as he took out a magnifying glass and began examining Takuya. "I'm human. Would you mind getting off me now, whoever you are?" he asked. "Oh, where are our manners? I am Bokomon, and this fellow with me is Neiman. And I'm so sorry, this was his fault," said Bokomon. "Yeah, my fault," Neiman added dumbly before realizing what was said. "Hey." Before anyone could question them further, a loud growl was heard, one that sent the Pagumon hopping for their lives. Everyone ran out to where the tracks met what was essentially the city limits and saw something emerging from the fire. "Who is that?" Takuya asked. "That is one bad dog." "Bad dog? Sir Baramon, Special Attack Emerald Blaze, and that's why we need your help," Bokomon explained. Sir Baramon is based on the mythological Cerberus. It resembles a black dog with 3 heads. One is the primary head in the middle, while its shoulders hold one each. "Where is the ancient spirit?" Sir Baramon demanded. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he placed a hand on the hilt of his katana. "So, he's after the ancient spirit, as well, but why?" Naruto pondered. "I can sense the spirit's presence all over this town. I must destroy it," growled Sir Baramon. "No way. It's mine," Takuya said without thinking. Naturally, this made the two creatures that ran into him very nervous, especially since Sir Baramon seemed very dangerous. "Then you shall be destroyed with it, Emerald Blaze," intoned Sir Baramon. A blast of emerald green fire sailed towards them, but luckily, almost all of them had shinobi training and were quick to spring into action. JP quickly flipped through hand signs and took a deep breath as his cheeks bulged. Water style. Water shotgun. He spewed a pressurized torrent of water from his mouth in hopes of extinguishing the fire before it reached them, but it was no use. These green flames burned hot enough that JP's jutsu was rendered nothing but steam on contact. Naruto was quick to react, though, and also weaved through some hand signs. Earth style. Mud wall, he intoned. A glob of mud was fired from Naruto's mouth, which erected a thick wall of earth that shielded him and the others from the blast, though they still felt the ground shake from the concussive force. Unfortunately, this just divided the fire into twin walls of flame, which forced Tommy to run out onto the tracks to avoid getting burned alive. "Oh no, Tommy!" gasped Naruto. He immediately ran out after him as Takuya was quick to follow just as Sir Baramon launched another wave of fire that turned the land they were previously standing on, plus a part of the tracks, into barcodes. "Tommy, are you all right?" Naruto asked. "I'm fine," the child replied. "But very soon we won't be. Bokomon." The group looked to the shore and found Sir Baramon consuming the barcodes, which severed the track they were on from the rest of the land. Thinking fast, Naruto kicked Takuya off of the track and onto the solid ground just beneath them, with Bokomon and Neiman clinging to his fellow Gogglehead, but he and Tommy slid off of the rail and screamed as they started falling. "Naruto! Tommy!" Zoe screamed in worry. "Ah, shit," cursed JP. Naruto held Tommy tightly as they fell, not really knowing what to do in this situation. Fortunately, he had help in the form of a Biju. "Naruto, you have to use the summoning jutsu. Quickly, I'll help you with the chakra, just focus on casting the technique," urged Megumi. Naruto gasped before narrowing his eyes. He quickly bit his thumb to draw blood and weaved through the hand signs, bird, dog, boar, monkey, and ram, and then while keeping a firm grip on Tommy he held his bloodied hand in front of him and focused his chakra as Megumi sent her Yuki through his system. Ninja art. Summoning jutsu. In a brilliant burst of red chakra, a mighty beast was summoned in a giant plume of smoke. Naruto smiled even as he and Tommy had a rough landing on the creature. 2 large, leathery wings shot out from the smoke cloud and easily blew it away as the creature flapped and was revealed to be a dragon from European mythology. This dragon was absolutely massive when compared to the toad boss, Gamabunta, as he easily stood as tall as 3 houses stacked on top of each other at the shoulder. His body was covered in scales that were the color of forest leaves with the sun shining through them in the finest emeralds, becoming near white at the base of his talons. Its eyes had vertical slit pupils and were the color of amber. The dragon summon looked around and said, Where am I? This is not Dragon's Peak, so this can only mean that someone was actually strong enough to summon me, but who?" Tommy's eyes were wide with shock and childlike awe as he stared down at the creature below him. "Whoa, Naruto. You summoned a dragon," Tommy said with a big smile. "Yeah, I didn't think it was gonna work, though. I haven't attempted to summon anything up until this point," Naruto admitted. "Oh, pardon me, but who is up there on my head?" Naruto and Tommy yelped as they were picked up in one of the dragon's forepaws, which had a similar appearance to human hands only with 3 fingers and a thumb, and were brought to eye level with the mighty beast. They were both nervous, but the friendly smile that the dragon was giving them was enough to calm their nerves. "Why, hello there, hatchlings. It looks like I just saved you from a terrible fall," the dragon said. "My name is Fernan. Would you like a ride onto solid ground where we can talk?" Naruto and Tommy looked at each other, and then looked back to Fernan and nodded yes, neither able to use their voice due to the shock of what just happened. As this was going on, Takuya had been watching and let out a sigh of relief. "Oh, thank Kami," he sighed. Suddenly, his detector began levitating off the ground where it had landed upon Takuya's landing and turned towards a furnace that was spewing a huge flame. A beam of light shot out from the barcode reader into the fire and triggered a small explosion that gave way to a pillar of bright light. And what Takuya saw rise up from the furnace was what appeared to be a totem crafted from a suit of red and yellow armor. "No way," gasped Takuya. "It's a spirit," Bokomon said as he and Neiman recovered. "Spirit of flame." This was the sight that Fernan happened upon as he landed and allowed Naruto to jump down with Tommy before flying up to more solid ground. Seeing the spirit, Takuya's eyes narrowed in determination. Takuya stood up and said, "Time to get it and go home. But how am I supposed to get it, and what do I do with it when I do?" "It doesn't matter, for it will soon be destroyed," exclaimed a familiar and unwanted figure. The group turned and saw Sir Baramon charging towards the spirit, which they just so happened to be in front of. Naruto was ready to jump into action, but Takuya beat him to the punch and rolled up his sleeve to reveal a storage seal on his arm. In a plume of smoke a bow staff appeared in Takuya's hands and he used it to defend as Sir Baramon chomped down on it and broke it in half. But he wasn't done, because as the demon dog Digimon leapt over the group and into the flames, Takuya grabbed his tail and was pulled in with him. Within the pillar of light, Sir Baramon snarled as he attempted to get close enough to the spirit to destroy it, but to his surprise he was lit ablaze with fire that actually hurt him. He screamed in pain and jumped out of the pillar, landing on his side and rolling along as smoke wafted from his body. "What just happened?" Naruto asked. "I guess the spirit's power was too great for Sir Baramon to handle," Bokomon guessed. "But what about Takuya?" Tommy asked. Takuya groaned as he got up and slowly opened his eyes as he fully expected to be on fire, but to his surprise he was unharmed. He looked up and locked eyes with the ancient spirit. Before his very eyes he saw flashes of himself standing before a tall, humanoid Digimon that looked a lot like the spirit before him. He saw himself and the Digimon walking towards each other and merging together. Finally, Takuya understood. He roared as his detector literally flew into his hand before pointing the device at the spirit. A beam of light shot forth and absorbed the spirit into Takuya's detector before a glowing red insignia appeared on its screen. "It is time," said the voice from before. An outline of the spirit appeared on Takuya's detector screen as he held up his hand. A barcode appeared around it as he waved his hands around before striking his detector's barcode scanner onto the code, drawing forth sparks as well as intense light. "Execute," with a flourish, Takuya ran his detector across the code. Spirit evolution. The code encompassed Takuya like a cocoon as his clothes were shredded. Thankfully, his body was glowing with a light so intense that it preserved his modesty. But that light soon inverted to where his body turned as black as the night and only his eyes and mouth were radiating light. As pieces of code appeared around him, parts of the spirit's armor appeared in that respective area, and after a brief moment, Takuya had changed into something else entirely. Agunimon. Agunimon is a humanoid Digimon clad in a black bodysuit and red armor. It draws deeply from its namesake, the fire god Agni, with its control over flames, while also associating with the legendary salamander and the elemental fire that folklore ascribes to it. It is equipped with the flame shoulder pauldrons and bears the fire spirit mark on its mask and belt. "Impossible. A human turned into a Digimon?" gasped Sir Baramon. "What did he turn into?" Tommy asked. "Well, let me see," Bokomon said as he took out a book and flipped to a certain page. Big and red, likes flames, not Santa Claus. Ah, Agunimon. "So, this is what the spirits will do for us," Naruto gasped in awe. "No matter who you are, you'll lose," Sir Baramon exclaimed. He jumped up at Agunimon and shot forth another emerald blaze attack, but the newly formed Digimon quickly cartwheeled out of the way, Tommy, Bokomon, and Neiman, and jumped out of range as Naruto followed with a chakra-enhanced jump of his own. Setting the trio down with JP and Zoe, Agunimon flipped back into action. But Sir Baramon is an old dog who knows some dirty tricks, as proven by how the eyes on his 2 remaining heads began to glow purple. "Portals of darkness," intoned Sir Baramon. Agunimon gasped as multiple portals appeared beneath him. He leapt from side to avoid portals that were forming beneath him, but he couldn't avoid the last one that opened right underneath him on the way down. He managed to grab onto the edge, but Sir Barramon clawed his hand and forced him down into what seemed to be a pocket dimension of pure darkness. "Now, we'll see how you handle my turf, darkness," cackled Sir Barramon. He jumped in after Agunimon as the portals closed. The fiery Digimon tried to fight back, but he was taking a beating as Sir Barramon clawed him mercilessly, cackling like a mad dog the whole time. But Agunimon was a tough Digimon and managed to pull through and grab Sir Barramon's foreleg just as he was about to strike. But the demon dog Digimon was not deterred. "No one escapes the darkness," Sir Barramon exclaimed before shooting another emerald blaze. Agunimon was engulfed in the stream of fire, but this proved to be ineffective as he nailed his foe with a wicked uppercut that forced Sir Barramon's jaw shut and cut off the attack. "I don't need to escape to beat you," Agunimon said. Sparks of fire began to fly from the back of his gauntlets as he built up power. Agunimon spun in place as he yelled, "Pyro Tornado." Suddenly, Sir Barramon was engulfed in a literal cyclone of fire that had surrounded Agunimon. The attack was so strong that it breached the dimensional barrier between the pocket dimension and the flame terminal. Everyone watched in awe as the tornado of fire rose up in front of them. "Dang, Takuya's got some serious firepower, literally," Naruto said. "But what if he's in trouble?" Zoe asked in concern. "Calm yourself, young one," Fernan said as the flames dissipated to reveal Agunimon with his foot planted firmly somewhere between Sir Barramon's lungs and colon. "Your friend has everything well in hand." "A human child defeated me?" "No," Sir Barramon screamed in outrage. The final nail on the coffin was the small explosion that exited out his back. As Agunimon and Sir Barraman remained suspended in the air, a familiar barcode appeared as a ring around Sir Barraman. But Agunimon was ready for this. "Now to take the fractal code," he said. He took out his detector and pushed a button before swiping it along the now-named fractal code which was absorbed into the device. Upon completion of its task, a picture of Sir Barramon appeared on the device as Sir Barramon's body faded away to reveal a glowing egg that flew away. Naruto made a mental note to ask the locals about that, because where he comes from dogs don't come from eggs. "Ooh, look at the pretty light," Neiman said stupidly. "You nincompoop, that pretty little light is Sir Barramon's essence. So, it looks like we're not done with him," Bokomon said before snapping the book shut as Neiman tried to read over his shoulder. "Hey, back off, you said you didn't want to carry the book." Agunimon landed and knelt down as he was once again engulfed in the fractal code, and when it disappeared, he had reverted back to Takuya. Fortunately, he was fully clothed, but he was breathing hard after that experience. "Man, that's tiring. Even more than chakra exhaustion," panted Takuya. "But what happened? And how did I know how to do all of that stuff?" The same symbol from before appeared on Takuya's detector screen as the voice that had been guiding him and the others answered him. "You are Digidestined." "I'm what now?" Takuya questioned. "Digidestined. Chosen for great things, but don't be frightened. The one that chose you is you," the voice explained. "I chose me?" Takuya pondered before looking out over the horizon. "I guess we're not going home anytime soon. We have no idea what we just got ourselves into, but one thing is for sure. This adventure of ours isn't over yet. Find out what happens on the next Naruto Frontier. The end. Thanks for watching. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.